Hi there. We're looking today at Mark 9, verse 33 to 37. And this episode follows Jesus' second prediction of his death. It occurs in this threefold repetition where Jesus predicts, the disciples don't understand it, and then Jesus has further instruction. And this is what's happening in chapter 9, verse 33. When they came to Capernaum, he was in the house. He asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" But they kept quiet because on the way they had argued about who was the greatest. Sitting down, Jesus called the 12 and said, "If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and the servant of all." He took a little child and had him stand among them. Taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me." On the way isn't simply a geographical statement. It's really a significant indicator that Christ is on the way to the cross, and that this part of this new Exodus theme from the book of Isaiah, Yahweh is on the way to redeem and deliver his people, to restore them to his relationship with himself, but not through military or political means, but through suffering and through the cross. And the question is, who is the greatest? I think it's easy for us as Westerners to have our egalitarian hat on, or our democratic sensibilities, and to forget that that was a hierarchic culture, and boasting was in some sense necessary to confirm your social status. Now, I'm not trying to excuse what was going on, but provide the setting. Remember, Paul himself was boasting in 2 Corinthians 11 and 12, reluctantly, yes, but he was boasting, and it's something that's difficult for us to get a full grasp on. That happened to me some years ago. I was visiting with a Park Street team to Kazakhstan, and we were invited to dinner with several families, and they were very careful to ensure that their guests, who were from Park Street, were to be seated at a particular places around on the floor, as it happened at these banquets. It made us feel a bit embarrassed and awkward, but it really was their way of showing honor to us. To sit, the older member of our team was to sit in a certain location. Well, we don't exactly know what the disciples were arguing about or discussing. It could have been who would succeed Jesus to lead the team after he died. But we do know that Jesus nailed it when he said, "If anyone wants to be first, he must be the very last and servant of them all." Notice he does not attack leadership. He defines it and he gives it some redefinition, saying that what matters most is to be first, to be great in the things that are great, that matter to God. Jesus sits and teaches them as the authoritative teacher, and he's the Greek there actually is raising his voice. He has to exert his authority over them. Later in chapter 10, verse 14, he's indignant. It's escalating, dealing with this unruly group. And he says, "Whoever wants to be first must be the very last and the servant of all." This was countercultural in ancient Greek and Roman society, where the slaves had no social status or very little, and it was regarded often as a demeaning job. But Jesus illustrates it in verse 36 as a great teacher would, bringing a child from the home in Capernaum in their midst and taking him in his arms. Again, as Westerners, we can be at quite a disadvantage to understand a text and look at it through our own cultural lenses, forgetting that ancient Near Eastern society was in many ways quite harsh. There was infanticide. Young girls under the age of 12 could be sold as slaves by their father. High infant mortality plagued the society, and there was a high demand for labor. So there wasn't much sentimental feeling about children. And so bringing a child here wasn't so much, isn't he or she cute? It was, and not really so much, isn't he or she humble? But really, here is the epitome of helplessness, of insignificance in that culture, of someone who was socially irrelevant to mainstream society. And yet Jesus turns it all upside down. Take a look at Isaiah 40, verse 11, and you see another portrait of Yahweh dealing with his own people. It says, he tends them like a flock, like his tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers his lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. It's a beautiful portrait of the tenderness, but also the mightiness of Yahweh with his people. And we see here the blessing and the enfolding, the embracing that Christ has of a member of their community who is regarded so in such a low esteem in that society. And he blesses them. And again, take a look at Genesis 48:49 for how important blessing was in the Jewish community. Yahweh blessed his people through the parents, through the father often. And we see that in the book of Genesis. But we see here another blessing of those who in the culture and the society were not blessed. Well, verse 37 says, whoever welcomes one of these little children in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. We see here a very clear link between this act of kindness, a cup of cold water, if you like, which is done welcoming a child or someone like a child, someone who is socially marginal, someone who is irrelevant or helpless to the community, in a sense is welcoming Christ if it's done in his name. And thereby they are welcoming the Father who had sent them. So you see the Father and the Son combined in this act of mercy and love. And as we consider this short piece of scripture, I think we could do well to think about it both obviously. How do we jostle, how do we wrestle for recognition or for rank or posture, for our point of view, whether it's online, whether it's to get the corner office in the company, or whether it's to get the certain rank in the university or in any social grouping that we may belong to. There's some obvious ways in which we look at status and honor through the world's eyes, not through the biblical eyes of those who must want to be first, must be last. But I think also there are some subtle, less obvious ways that we exclude people and we discriminate against others, perhaps not even aware of the fact that we have marginalized others in our quest for control or power. So as we consider this in our discussion today, remember, whoever welcomes one of these little children, one such as these, in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me does not welcome me, but the one who sent me. Would Jesus be welcome in our home? Would the Father and the Son be welcome in our church? Let's think and pray about these things so we may be found worthy of his blessing in our own lives, so we may be a blessing to others.